In Brightburn, Kansas, Kyle and Tori are getting naughty, hoping they'll finally have a baby. When Tori hears a noise, she goes to investigate. Suddenly the whole building shakes and the power goes out. In the distance, they see a bright red light. Sometime later, the couple has a cute baby boy who is raised with lots of love. 10 years later, Tori searches for her son because it's time for school. She starts whistling and he whistles back from his hiding spot, which is a little game they often play. Tori follows the noise to the barn, and Brandon jumps out to startle her. When they come out, Kyle reminds Brandon not to go to the barn because it's dangerous. At school, the teacher asks a question about bees and Brandon answers perfectly. He even mentions a species that forces others to raise their young. He talks so much that a boy mocks him for it, and the whole class laughs except for Caitlin. She tells Brandon that smart guys like him rule the world. That night, something starts glowing red in the barn. At the same time, Tori's radio stops working. Suddenly Brandon starts having a seizure in his sleep, so strong that it makes his bed shake. Tori thinks she hears a noise, but the seizure stops, so Tori goes back to painting. Brandon's eyes open, revealing their glowing red. He then opens the window and jumps, falling with a thud. Tori hears a noise again and goes outside to investigate, but she thinks it was just the swing. When she's about to leave, she feels something running behind her. As she walks through her drying laundry, she sees Brandon's back, but he quickly disappears. Tori decides to search the barn and finds him muttering strange words while shaking a chained hatch. She calls his name a few times, but he doesn't stop until she touches his shoulder. He's startled by her presence and clearly confused by being there. He even says he was hearing voices. Tori comforts him and claims it was sleepwalking. After Tori takes Brandon back to bed, the hatch in the barn glows again. When Kyle asks her what happened, Tori only says that Brandon was sleepwalking downstairs. The next day Brandon tries to mow the lawn, but the mower won't start. Brandon gets so frustrated that he throws it across the yard without breaking a sweat. He's in shock at what he did, and he starts hearing the voices again. When he finds the mower, he touches the dangerously spinning blades, which breaks the machine but doesn't hurt him. For Brandon's birthday, the family takes him to a diner. Tori's sister Marilee is Brandon's school counselor, so she mentions what a genius he is, and her husband Noah gifts him a hunting rifle. However, Kyle thinks it's an inappropriate gift for a kid and takes it away. An angry Brandon demands his gift back and slams his fist on the table, causing all the arcade machines to turn off. Kyle announces that they aren't having dessert and they're going home. Brandon won't listen, so Kyle grabs his arm, but the kid won't move and the machines flicker again. Tori tells her son to listen to his father, and the family finally leaves while employee Erica watches them warily. At home, the couple discusses how Brandon has changed, and Tori remembers they were rebellious as teens too. Her parents never cared, so she wants to be a better mother for her kid. Kyle thinks they should go camping on the weekend to relax. During breakfast, Brandon doesn't listen to his parents talking to him and just keeps eating. Kyle checks on him and finds him chewing his fork. When Kyle pulls it out, the fork is bent and Brandon snaps out of it, confused by what he just did. Tori goes to Brandon's room to get his jacket and finds pictures hidden under his mattress. When Kyle joins her, they look at them together and notice several women in their underwear. They also see gross pictures of human organs, so they decide to talk to him later. While they're camping, Brandon tells Kyle about changes in the body and how they're natural to feel certain urges, but also that the important thing is to find someone to love. Brandon misunderstands what those urges are and wonders if he should start now, so Kyle ends the conversation. That night, a noise wakes Tori up and she discovers that Brandon is gone. Meanwhile, Caitlin is sleeping calmly, but she's awakened by her laptop suddenly playing a love song. She quickly closes it and returns to bed, but as soon as she turns around, the music starts playing again. This time she puts some notebooks on top of the laptop after closing it. When the curtains move behind her, Caitlin yells to call her mom, and Brandon appears by the window. Soon Erica bursts into the room and hugs her daughter before checking the curtains, but there's nobody there. Erica worries when Caitlin mentions Brandon's name. At the campsite, Kyle and Tori go looking for their son and find him standing in the middle of the woods. He claims he only left to pee. Later at school, Brandon starts designing a weird costume in his notebook. Tori tells Marilee about her son's weird behavior, but Marilee thinks it's normal puberty stuff. When Tori checks on him, she sees him drawing a weird symbol, which he immediately hides from her. That night Kyle hears the chickens panicking in the coop. Thinking it's a wolf, he grabs a rifle and goes to investigate, only to find Brandon staring at the animals. At first he doesn't respond, and when Kyle asks if he's okay, Brandon says, "I think so," before going to bed. In the middle of the night, the chickens panic again. Kyle returns to the coop and finds them all dead. He immediately calls Tori and she blames it on a wolf. However, Kyle thinks Brandon did it because a wolf can't break the lock, but Tori thinks he's overreacting. At gym class, the kids play a game called Trust Circle in which they push a kid around. During Brandon's turn, Caitlin refuses to touch him and lets him fall, causing everyone to laugh. The teacher asks Caitlin to help Brandon, but she says no and calls him a pervert. When the teacher threatens to fail her, Caitlin offers her hand, so Brandon squeezes it until he breaks it. At the police station, a furious Erica demands that Brandon be arrested. However, the cops explain he's just a kid, so he'll get suspension and counseling. Erica wonders if Brandon's real mother was a psycho, but Tori says she's the real mother and takes her family away. At home, Tori tells Kyle what happened in the barn. Kyle freaks out and points out that Brandon was never harmed by anything, but now he appears to be harming others. Meanwhile, Brandon keeps hearing the voices and translates the strange word to take. He goes to the barn and breaks the chain, so the red light takes over him. He has a seizure as he repeats the strange words. Seeing the light, Tori runs to the barn and finds Brandon floating. When she calls his name, the light disappears and he falls into the hole, where a piece of metal hurts his hand. Tori goes down in the hole too and comforts her son while he asks who he is, staring at the weird machine in front of them. Tori explains that this machine is a spaceship that crashed in the area and she found baby Brandon inside. She tries to convince him that he's still her son, but he's furious because his parents lied to him. He runs to the house and breaks a bunch of things before running outside. Under the rain, he finishes translating the message to take the world. His eyes glow before they shoot lasers. Minutes later, Caitlin is using her computer but it suddenly stops working. When she closes it, she finds Brandon in her room. She cries in fear as he brings her flowers and promises that soon the whole world will know he's special. Caitlin explains her mother doesn't want her to talk to him, so he says he'll take care of that. At the diner, Erica is closing up when she hears a noise. A bunch of symbols has appeared on the windows, but she thinks it's just a prank. The lights start flickering and suddenly one breaks, so a shard damages Erica's eye. When she removes it, blood sprouts out and impairs her vision. As the lights keep flickering, she notices something moving near her, so she swings a baseball bat trying to defend herself to no avail. A terrified Erica runs to hide in the freezer, only to stare in shock at a hot laser cutting the door down before it's ripped off. Brandon appears wearing the costume he designed and jumps on her. The next morning, Brandon tells his parents that he's feeling better. Meanwhile, the police find the mess at the diner but no Erica in sight, and she won't answer her phone. Sheriff Gerald notices something weird on the window, so he blows on it to reveal the symbol. During counseling, Marilee asks Brandon how he feels about being adopted. He thinks it's great because he's special and his real parents aren't from a stupid place like this one. He also calls himself superior. When Marilee asks him if he feels bad about Caitlin, he dodges the question. Marilee begs him to open up since she needs to write a report for the sheriff, which makes him angry. That night, Marilee is home alone when the house alarm detects something in the backyard. Suddenly someone knocks on the door and Marilee opens it to find Brandon, who tells her not to write the report because it won't be good for anyone. Marilee says she has to do her job and tells him to leave, which he agrees to with a creepy smile. Then the alarm reacts again, so Marilee goes outside to check on the sensors. When she goes back inside, she doesn't notice that Brandon has sneaked in. Once Marilee is in bed, Brandon tries to approach her, but at that moment Noah arrives. While he brushes his teeth, he sees something moving behind him and follows it to the closet, where he finds Brandon and takes off his mask. A furious Noah drags Brandon out of the house and tries to get him in his truck, saying he'll tell his parents about this. Suddenly the lights flicker as Brandon puts on his mask and his eyes glow as he throws Noah against the garage door. When Noah recovers, the kid is gone. Then Noah gets in his truck and leaves, but in the middle of the road, Brandon hits the window and causes the vehicle to lose control. Noah manages to avoid crashing, but the truck soon stops working. At that moment Brandon appears floating above the road, only to disappear in a second. Suddenly the truck is lifted in the air and quickly released. Noah breaks his jaw on the steering wheel as the vehicle crashes. Brandon can now use his blood to draw his symbol on the road. At home, Tori and Kyle are worried because their son is missing. At that moment Brandon comes back with his shirt off and claims he's been playing soccer. Tori offers to wash the shirt but Brandon says he'll do it and goes to his room. The couple can tell he's lying, yet they don't know what to do because no doctor will believe he's an alien. A flashback shows the night the spaceship landed in the forest. Kyle finds the bed empty so he follows some noises into the woods, where he discovers Tori holding a baby next to the mysterious machine. Suddenly the baby starts bleeding and Tori soon follows. When Kyle looks at the child, his eyes glow. At that moment Kyle wakes up from this nightmare because of an emergency call. The couple rushes to the hospital, where Marilee tells them about Noah's crash and Brandon's visit. The next morning Tori tells Brandon that Noah died, but the kid doesn't show any emotion. He claims he doesn't know what happened, however Kyle doesn't believe him and yells at him. When Brandon tries to leave, Kyle grabs his arm, so Brandon pushes him into the cupboard. After Tori sends Brandon to his room, Kyle waits until the kid is showering to search for the shirt. He finds it hidden behind a dresser and notices the bloodstains. When Brandon comes out of the bathroom, Kyle hides the shirt and apologizes to his son to keep him calm. Afterward Kyle shows the shirt to Tori, who refuses to see the truth. Kyle yells at her and says that this isn't their son, but Tori just runs away. The next day, Gerald sees a picture of the symbol found on the road next to Noah and realizes it's the same symbol from the diner. That night, Kyle looks at all the memories of Brandon and feels bad. He tells Tori that he'll take their son away for the weekend so he can try to fix their relationship. The next morning, Kyle and Brandon go hunting in the woods. Tori is then visited by Gerald, who shows him a picture of the symbol and points out that it matches Brandon's initials. However, Tori pretends she doesn't know what it is. He also asks to come in, but Tori kicks him out. After Gerald is gone, Tori runs to Brandon's room and opens his notebook, only to find the same symbol repeated on every page. There are also drawings of his costume and all the deaths he's caused. The last pictures say take the world and show Brandon shooting lasers at Earth, presenting himself as a god. In the woods, Kyle waits until Brandon turns around and shoots him in the head, however the bullet doesn't hurt him. A horrified Kyle quickly reloads his rifle, but when he looks up Brandon is gone. Kyle starts to run while feeling something moving near him. Suddenly Brandon appears in front of him wearing his costume and flies to knock his father down. Kyle begs for his life as Brandon grabs him, but his pleas are answered with lasers shot right into his eyes. They pierce his head, instantly killing him. At home, Tori is in tears as she keeps calling Kyle's phone. When the call is finally answered, she admits Kyle was right and her son killed them all. However, the one who answered is Brandon, who tells her that Kyle is gone and that he's now home. Nearby, Brandon destroys the phone. Suddenly the house starts shaking and the walls begin to crumble. Tori panics and runs to hide under a table to call 911. The house keeps shaking and the furniture falls so she can't talk, but Gerald is immediately informed of an emergency call at that address. When the chaos stops, Tori comes out of hiding to try to find an exit. However, she freezes when Brandon flies through several walls and doors. At the same time, Gerald arrives with his deputy and calls Tori's name, so she runs to meet them. Unfortunately, Brandon tackles Gerald into the column, killing him in a shower of blood. The deputy tells Tori to hide and calls for backup before searching the house. She sees Brandon at the window, but as soon as she blinks, he moves fast and reappears behind her to kill her by repeatedly smashing her on the roof before throwing her body through the window. Tori is hiding under the bed and hears Brandon whistling like in their little game. She can see his floating feet as he searches the room and leaves. When she crawls out, Brandon immediately comes back and checks under the bed, but she's escaped through the window. She hangs onto the edge until her hands slip and she falls with quite a rough landing. Her hand is now injured, which makes her remember that the spaceship's metal can damage her son. As Tori runs, Brandon flies out of the house through the roof. Tori makes it to the barn, which starts to shake because Brandon is hitting it. When Tori activates the spaceship, she's horrified to find Erica's dissected body surrounded by the symbol. After taking a piece of metal from the ship, Tori calls Brandon and whistles, pretending she just wants to play. She hears him whistle back and finds him behind her, so she tells him how much she loves him before removing his mask. As she continues to give him words of affection, Brandon says he does want to do good. Tori hugs him and cries as she gets ready to stab him, but Brandon stops her and easily disarms her. Then a furious Brandon grabs Tori and flies through the roof, going up into the sky at amazing speed. Once they're above the clouds, he lets go of her and watches her fall to her death. At that moment, a plane appears nearby. The next morning, the FBI discovers that the plane has crashed into Tori's house, and the explosion got rid of all the evidence of the murders. Not a single passenger survived, but Brandon's symbol is on the wreckage. The firemen rescue Brandon, who is pretending to be a poor victim. Sometime later, a series of disasters appears all over the news. They don't know who is causing them, but Brandon's shadow is often seen fleeing the scene. He also burns his symbol on a big field while a conspiracy guy on the internet warns humanity about aliens. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.